Hey guys, good afternoon. So AI and blockchain. AI is probably the hottest topic right now in all of tech. And everyone talks about AI. And we're going to figure out right now how this collides with blockchain. So let's start off by going around the table, doing a quick intro, and giving your quick thoughts on AI.
Hi everybody, I'm Penryn. I lead developer relations at Worldcoin. We're developing specifically relevant to this conversation is World ID, our decentralized proof of personhood protocol in the age of AI, distinguishing what's human generated, what's AI generated is specifically useful, and we want to be the solution for that so that you can know that something comes from a real human.
Hi there, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Trent McConaghy. By background, I spent almost 20 years using AI to help computer chip design. So to help build, design chips that would have 1 billion transistors or more that are now in your iPhones and Samsungs and so on. Since 2013, I've been building on blockchain, NFTs on Bitcoin, and more. And since 2017, combined those two passions, AI and blockchain, to do Ocean Protocol, which is all around decentralized data markets, access control for data, all of that. So great to be here.
Hey everyone, I'm Illia, co-founder of Near Protocol. Before Near, I was actually a machine learning researcher at Google Research, and I worked across kind of natural language understanding, including on a paper called Attention is All You Need, which is introduced transformers, which are used in ChatGPT, Midjourney, Stability, and all the kind of large language models right now.
Hi, my name is Charles Okochu. I'm the Global Business Development Manager for Amazon Managed Blockchain at AWS. I've been with AWS now for about 4 years, and before that I worked at a cryptocurrency hedge fund. So I've been following with great interest what's been happening in the AI space and the kind of areas where at AWS we see an integration between AI, and as a result, there's also a lot of interest in AI in general. So we've launched a bunch of services over the last few months that I'll be happy to talk about.
So I guess the first question is AI new, right? We hear a lot about AI these days from the media. It's going to steal our jobs, from VCs and everyone like that. But we're talking earlier about this, and AI isn't really a new technology. So right now, where are we in AI, and what's changed in the last year, 2 years, 10 years? You go first.
Sure, I can answer to this. So it's first conceptualized in the 1940s, and even before, depending how you ask. The term was coined in the 1950s. And AI, ever since, people are building towards it. And it's sort of become this field that has spawned most other computer science fields. Databases were once considered AI, spreadsheets, operations research. And once those things got sufficiently mature as technologies, they just became their own thing. So, but there's a lot of things that are still sort of considered AI, things like simulated annealing, et cetera, that came out in the 80s. That one was for chip design, so I know it well. So AI has been around a long time, and it has various labels. If you ask 20 different AI researchers what is AI, they'll give you 20 different answers, or 40. So I think the big change is really that AI has hit the zeitgeist for the mainstream of people, and they're able to play with it directly with things like ChatGPT. So it's been around a long time, and even creative AI has been around decades. But now people can use creative AI, generative AI, LLMs directly themselves, and that's capturing the imagination of the public.
Sure. Now, Charles, from your point of view, how has Amazon's AI offerings have changed, right? You guys have had Amazon services for a long time, right? But in the last few years, you've really seen an interest increase in AI. So what's new there?
Yeah, as you said, AI is not new. It's been around for many years, and at AWS we've been providing services and tools to support artificial intelligence and machine learning. At the base level, we have our EC2 compute platform, which allows you to run with GPUs, to kind of build and run the AI models, and then more recently, over the last couple of years, we've launched other services like AWS SageMaker, which is used by Formula One and a lot of companies to help build and deploy AI models for their applications. And more recently, we've launched AWS Bedrock, which is a generative AI platform managed by AWS, and it allows you to build generative AI applications without just using an API without having to worry about building out the infrastructure. And also, we've also provided access to open source AI foundational models like diffusion and stability, as well as A121. And also, AWS also has specific foundational models like Titan, which allows you to do things like text summarization. So yeah, so we definitely have quite a track history when it comes to AI.
For sure. Now, how about in the blockchain world, right? Like AI is not new, blockchain is kind of new. So what's changed recently with the two of these things?
So I think, yeah, to add on kind of, this is not new. I think like everyone here probably have been using AI like products for about, as long as you live probably, but especially in the last like 15 years. I mean, if you're using Google or any search engine, there's so much actually machine learning going on behind the scene. And so I think the change indeed that happened is it became a lot more consumer, and it also became a lot more on edge, right? And even if, right now you're still using an API or existing APIs, the kind of resurgence of the, like, hey, you can actually have like a natural language interface with it and interact with it, allows this to become a lot more kind of personalized and dedicated. And this is where blockchain, and I would more broadly saying Web3, is really the theme comes in, because Web3 is all about bringing things to the user, getting them owned by the user. On the other side, you also have the kind of the opposite side is like, how do we keep track of who created what? How do we create reputation around that? And we can talk about that as well. So I think it's a coalescence of this, like the things becoming more personal, things becoming more kind of abundant and require kind of cryptography to keep track, as well as kind of marketplaces around resources for data, compute, and other places as well, which like with surge in demand, also blockchain can facilitate.
I used to work on a project that was a blockchain database, and because of that, I had to really understand, what does blockchain or Web3 bring above and beyond databases? And I arrived at 4 things in total. And you can view these as the key benefits of Web3 compared to previous technologies: decentralization, immutability, assets, and monetization. With each of those, benefits come out. So decentralization, you can have DAOs and governance around data, et cetera. Immutability, this gives you provenance of data. You want to know where your training data came from, you can have provenance for licensing all of that. The third thing is assets, your keys, your data. And when we say data, it could be training data, but it could also be the model itself. It could be predictions from the model, et cetera. And then finally, monetization. The key thing here is incentives. Bitcoin famously incentivizes for people spending millions of dollars a day to just secure the network, and many other networks too. So those 4 benefits you can bring to AI, and I mentioned a couple, but there's quite a few. Kind of turn the crank: decentralization, immutability, assets, and incentives/monetization, and there's a lot. So in our case, in Ocean, we're focusing on decentralized data markets, because that kind of leverages the benefits of all 4, such that people can get these benefits. Thanks.
Yeah, I completely agree, Trent, with everything you just said. And I think like most of what you just said boils down to alignment, right? So much of Web3 is about creating the right incentive structures for things, and the fact that the technology itself gives you the freedom to create those incentive structures. And we talk about alignment a lot with AI as well, but it really is just about making sure that it gets used for the right things. Because AI, whether it's used for fantastic use cases or used for some negative use cases, it's going to make the positive effects or the negative effects a lot stronger, right? So making sure that it gets used for those positive effects more than the negative effects, and that we decrease the negative effects as much as possible, is really where Web3 can come in to help AI reach its maximum potential.
So I guess then, how do we keep AI out of the hands of bad actors, right? Because bad actors have always had technology. We talk about deep fakes, for instance. Well, before that, Photoshop was around since the late 90s. We've had Photoshopped images for the longest time that are inauthentic, they're not real. with deepfakes is just easier, I guess. But then how do we make sure that we can still trust what we see and make sure that only good actors have AI access?
It all boils down to reputation, right? And with that, you need an identity that a reputation can be tied to. That doesn't have to be one that doxes you or anything, but having a human in the loop with AI is important, right? An AI bot that runs off on its own with no oversight from a person can be incredibly damaging. Right. So having a human in the loop that is assisting with that AI, right? It is, collaborating with that human, or you can say the human's collaborating with the AI, perhaps. That's really important. And with World ID, right, we have one person, one identity, doesn't give away any personal information. But when that one person has that one identity, it means that if the AI tools that they've built that they're using go run off and cause a lot of ruckus, then it impacts that person's reputation, and therefore the reputation of the AI systems they're using as well, right?
So we can tie it back to that author of the work, right? Without knowing who they are, but still knowing where it came from?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
Well, I think it's a very dangerous path to go down to say, how do we stop bad people from using this technology? Who gets to decide who those bad people are, right? If you ask, so like basically, and here we are in a crypto conference, all about censorship resistance, right? Well, what does that mean? It means that, there isn't gatekeeping. And there's good reasons for that, because, it's not a problem to be gatekeeped until you're the person that's being gatekeeped, to have your bank account shut down, right? So I think rather than having hard constraints saying, this person is bad, they can't do this, it really is about biasing towards nudging people towards this, towards that, such that ultimately, what is it that we want? We want humans in the world to be able to chase their dreams, to self-actualize, all of that, right? And then you can sort of treat that like the objective function, and then work backwards, saying, okay, how can we leverage these general purpose technologies, whether it's crypto or AI and otherwise, to help people achieve their dreams and work up Maslow's hierarchy from not starving to healthcare, education, et cetera. So then getting very specific, it means actually very explicitly not gatekeeping, but to help, bias. So having tools for reputation, like you talked about, but also having this concept of letting go, right? And a good example is nature itself. We have nature that gives us rain and sun, but it also gives us tsunamis and storms. But overall, it works pretty well, and I think this is how we should be approaching this technology too. It's a double-edged sword. There's going to be the good and the bad. There's still going to be bad actors using it, but you want to help to maximize the benefits from the good actors and minimize from the bad actors, however you define that. And it's really important to follow that philosophy. Otherwise, we have lots of bad things happen.
Yeah, I would add, reputation is probably the core here, and creating. At some point, it doesn't matter if it's a person created this, a person asked AI to create this, or AI created this, but the AI is consistently, positive and creating positive content. What matters is that there's a really easy way to identify when somebody is malicious actor and have a consensus around that. And I think that's a usually part that's really hard. Let's even say you get a scammer phone call, right? And you're like, that's a scammer phone call. There's no way to have a consensus around that such that your phone can block that going forward, right? And we actually have blockchain and all the technologies we have now are literally designed to do that, to keep track of this kind of reputation, have consensus around this. And I think abstracting that out, kind of generally, what is the kind of governance of, more broadly, what's good and bad, we're probably not going to have in a precise answer, but we can have kind of ways to decide and score different things as a community coming together. And maybe there will be multiple communities that have somewhat different views, but that, again, this is how kind of blockchain, and DAO is a tool, but we have the tooling now to do this kind of decisions. And the simplest way is actually making sure that there is a training data that actually specifies what, by kind of moral standards or whatever, we say is good or bad, and we can now score using this training and validation data, these new models and new products, for example, or where they fit in this spectrum. And again, it's not going to be hard line. It's not going to be even static. It's going to be evolving. But we can actually now use this to curate these data sets and maintain.
So
this.
we can block people who are working in malice, right? But at the same time, protect those who have unpopular speech, right? Protect free speech, but block scam callers, I guess.
Yeah, so it's not blocking in the sense that now nobody will ever receive this call, right? That's the thing. It's like this is a very subjective, like all of this is very subjective. And so you need to look at it more from a subjective perspective. I don't want to receive scam calls, which I consider, for example, advertisement of anything, right? And some people love advertisements. Some people love cold calls, I'm assuming, right? And so like it is subjective, and like you just need to give the user an option to select the preferences. Right now, we don't have this option. And kind of unless there's systems built, we're not going to have this option at all. Like, you'll turn on TV and like it's all generated and you will not even know, and you cannot tune it out. Like that's what we need to prevent. It's not that like we need to like actually block someone from doing things. Like we cannot do that. And again, like this actually space is exactly the opposite. It's more that as a subjective, I don't want to transact with this. I don't want to watch this. I don't want to choose this, right? And so, and obviously like individually, people probably cannot do it. So you need a community that you can select into, right? Say, I believe this community is doing a great job at like deciding what's, malicious or like not safe or whatever. I select to go with this community, and then that community kind of maintains like the lists of what's like and scoring.
Sure. So Charles, how does Amazon help here, right? You guys have the hardware behind the scenes, and what does your like hardware look like now versus 5 years ago when AI was simply like an idea?
That's a very interesting question. So, I mean, at this point, for a lot of customers, not every company has in-house AI expertise. So, I mean, as we said, we started out with servers, compute instances with graphics GPUs, and we also have our own customized chipsets that are available to customers. But now we're building layers on top of that, and and in the area of on the blockchain side, which is where I cover at AWS. We have like managed blockchain services at AWS to allow customers to build applications, and we manage the blockchain nodes on their behalf. Now, beyond that, I think for generative AI, the biggest issue that we're beginning to see is validating, the trust, how you validate the data, the information you're seeing is accurate or has it been tampered with, and how do you differentiate between real and not real. And, we're looking at, into blockchain technology as a way to help solve those type of problems. So for instance, in blockchain, there's a concept of ZK rollups or zero knowledge proofs, which allow, which are used by layer 2 blockchains like, Polygon and Avalanche to validate, run the transactions on the off-chain, and then you now verify the transactions on the mainnet. And so that zero knowledge proofs can also be used to validate any mathematical computations, and it can also be used for verifying the integrity of large language models. So there are like a couple of ways we're seeing the use of zero knowledge proofs in blockchain. One is validating the large language model in authenticity. So for instance, if we just launched ChatGPT 3 and ChatGPT 4, how do you know that when you run, a query against an API that's sitting in front of of a generative AI platform, that you're running it against the correct model? Are you running against ChatGPT 3 or GPT-4? Or even if you're running a private large language model and you have different versions, or you have like maybe 3 layers. One is free, one is premium, where you pay extra, and one is maybe additional advanced model. And you run it against the API. How do you know that you're running it against the correct model or the correct type of model? So that's one area. And then there's like model integrity and ensuring that when you're transacting or trying to run queries against an AI model, that it's not giving you biased inputs. So for instance, when you're using it for doing things like credit scores, for instance, that's another example. Another area is like attestation. So if you want to, integrate attestations from an external source into your on-chain, onto your on-chain data and onto your large language models, how do you do that? And then, an area where he will probably find interesting is proof of personhood. So how do you validate that the people that are adding data into the large language model are in fact people versus bots trying to integrate, generate a Sybil attack on the generative model. So, and then last but not least, I think there's decentralizing the large language model. So right now, most of the the ones that we're aware of, like ChatGPT, Bard, are all being run by very large organizations, big tech. And in blockchain, we're trying to decentralize. We're trying to move away from, depending on large companies to kind of help us manage our models. So the idea is to kind of have a decentralized way of training the data, so anyone can create their own decentralized model and then submit the outputs to the large model over time.
So I guess like the tie that binds here are these ZK rollups, right? Like that is the intersection between AI and blockchain. Is that correct?
I'd say that's a small, narrow part of it, to be honest. I think the intersection is, it comes to me, what it comes back to is blockchain or Web3 brings benefits for decentralization, spreading of power, immutability for things like provenance of data, where it came from and so on. Assets, if you have the key to access this raw data set or the key to access this model or get the key to access the prediction, you own it. That's the blockchain way, if you will. And then finally, incentives, right? You can incentivize people to train large models. You can incentivize people to supply data, et cetera. So if we focus on just one narrow technology like ZK, that's just a small thing. It's a very useful, powerful technology, but we don't need to treat it like a panacea. In fact, actually, what you described, many of those problems, I love the idea of using ZK for it, but you can actually approach it much more simply with today's technology. ZK isn't quite mature enough, right? It's about the supply chain of data itself, right? Going from raw data, and if you want that to be verified, you have it coming from sensors that aren't people, but they're signing it digitally. And then you're going from the raw data, you're cleaning it up, you're converting it into feature vectors, you're training the model, and then you're doing predictions against it. And every step along the way, you can be digitally signing this, you can have attestations. The computation itself could be fully verified op by op on a VM on a chain, but you could also do more soft verification by saying, does it have a training error less than a certain percentage, et cetera. So, and all the way along with this, you're getting all these benefits, the decentralization, DAOs can control this, the immutability, the supply chain, provenance, the assets, everyone can own this, and then finally incentives. You can incentivize people to train that model, et cetera. So all the way along, we have to be very careful not to constrain blockchain and AI to just one idea here and there. There's a lot of things. It's a really huge intersection. AI itself is a huge, huge field. And crypto as well, or Web3. So we shouldn't be surprised that the intersection also is very large with a lot of different takes.
Yeah, I completely agree that that one technology isn't what we should limit ourselves to, but I think zero-knowledge proofs especially are incredibly useful because you have the trust and the verifiability, but also the privacy aspect of it. That's a huge thing, right, with blockchain especially, is that by default things are public. Mm-hmm. Which then leads to okay, anyone can use that, train their own AI on it, things like that, right? But the privacy aspect is super, super useful. Yeah,
so I agree. It's verifiability of the compute if you want op by op verifiability. But if you want to know and just verify that your training error is below a threshold, you don't. There's much simpler, lighter ways to do that. And this is on the compute, not on the data. You don't need ZK to verify on the data. Just a hash will do with a digital signature.
But also for shielded transactions. So if you want to ensure privacy, as you mentioned, you want to ensure that the data that you're sending into to run against a model is shielded, so you don't expose any PII data. So, but I agree with you that ZK rollups are just one tool. But from our perspective, we think it's exciting that that's from our perspective the intersection between blockchain and AI.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is here is mostly around practicality, because if we talk about what OpenAI and Google running internally, they're running it on one model lives at least on usually 4 really large accelerators, so it's $100,000 worth of compute to run. When you type in a query, especially when you say thank you to ChatGPT, you're wasting pretty much 30 cents to $1, just FYI.
Don't be polite. Don't say please and
yeah, don't
thank
be
you.
polite with a language model. And so running any kind of ZK on that, ZK right now is about 10,000 times slower. I don't know. I know my guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But so it's just insane amount of compute to do this. And I would say, again, I always want to bring back that blockchain is a specific technology, right? It literally has in the name that it's blockchain. crypto is a way to create incentives. That's why I like Web3 or open web as a concept, because it's actually going beyond just this way of centralized architecture, but actually leveraging more that the user has the data, has the ownership, and is participating in some form of P2P, right? And blockchain is facilitating that, but it's not the only piece. And I think like we'll see a lot more on-edge compute because this is actually way easier to verify if you just run it yourself. And you can evaluate it locally as well. So a lot more kind of technology kind of shifts will happen through this. And like I think the way we think of a lot about some of the architectures right now will just change in the next 2 years, just because like this thing's evolving really quickly. People are really inventing new ways of doing it, and actually open source community has such a huge incentives to figure it out how to run it themselves and not rely on any partner to do that. That I think like that problem actually will be the least of the challenges. I think data is still the kind of core challenge, and like figuring out how to manage that. And then the output and outcome certification is obviously a huge challenge for, like that our society, because it runs on language, it will be kind of penetrated through that. And so making sure we understand kind of where things are coming from and to where is extremely important. And it's not a new problem. Like this problem exists right now. People are creating kind of fake content or mislabeling it or saying that this is written by somebody else or whatever. Or like textbooks have been rewritten under the same, like the history textbook I studied on and like what's now is completely different. And things like that happen all the time. Like we have technology to do that, and that kind of will be important. So I think, I agree with Trent. I think zeroing down on specific technology, although you know it's kind of a popular and hot, is like not enough, because actually the architecture use cases are kind of settling down right now, and you know we should continue innovating even on how those things are used.
Yeah, great. So to wrap things up, I guess, right? Do we need to fear AI? Will AI take our jobs or make us more productive?
Yes, please. Where do I sign? A transaction.
I mean, I have a 10-year vision for this that I'm very hopeful for, where we can leverage AI and Web3 to create abundance. How? Imagine an Uber fleet where each of the cars is self-driving and self-owning, okay? And all the extra money it makes sends that money back to humans via UBI, and Worldcoin is a very great way to vet for this, right? So we don't stop with the cars. We also do this with electric power grids. We do this with forests, everything, right? So AI and crypto can play well, very, very well together. And then, and therefore, we can use this as a way to sort of help people achieve their dreams, achieve their goals, without relying on that day-to-day job. So AI will take most of the jobs in the next 10 or 20 years. But that's okay. If we decouple the idea of searching for meaning from paying for your family to feed itself, then that's a very glorious future. And that, to me, that's why I wake up in the morning, is that we can, chase our dreams, self-actualize, and don't be a slave to wages. That's the heart of it. So AI and blockchain can take us there.
I couldn't agree more. It's, the whole reason Worldcoin is here is to give everyone in the world their fair share. And that's why we built this whole proof of personhood. AI is going to just eliminate the need for a lot of the work that people do and people get paid for. And UBI is just necessary in that future to, keep humanity where it is.
And hope, go ahead, sorry.
Well, I mean, I kind of wish we all have the utopia that he just described. But from my perspective, I think every time a new technology comes around, people always say it's the end of the world, it's going to take over everything, AI especially. But from what I'm seeing, some of the innovative use cases I've started to see, across, I just think it's going to become yet another productivity tool. Yes, there will be some jobs eliminated, like, you can notice Facebook or Meta and a few other companies have eliminated staff over the last couple of, last year or so, because most of the developers the fewer developers they have are able to leverage AI tools. I mean, even at AWS, we've launched a Code Whisperer, which is an AI tool that allows developers to, that helps them code better and will be more productive. So I think it's just going to lead to more productivity. And we're going to need more developers, I guess. We're going to need more generative AI developers. So, and also in crypto, there will be kind of an intersection between crypto and AI. So from my perspective, I don't think that we're going to all be living on Mars or something, but I think we'll be more productive.
The killer robots will run on Amazon. They're powered by Near, and will scan your retinas as well, I guess.
Well, I think that the really interesting kind of short to medium term will be this, I call them on-chain agents, is really kind of a AI model that is actually living in some decentralized container and is like you give it a mission, right? You say like, hey, we want to grow number of trees in Seoul, for example, and it actually has some money and it can coordinate people to actually do work, right? Because like at the end, AI cannot do anything in real world, right? I mean, yes, maybe we'll have more robots and stuff over time, but right now, actually, it will be more AI models coordinating people. And that's, again, what blockchain is really good at, is really creating these coordinating networks. And so I think that's will be a really interesting use case where we'll see kind of, never sleeping pretty much coordinator of this DAOs, which is not really human, but now like driven by mission. Everybody can inspect exactly how it makes decisions. And yeah, I'm excited.
Like Skynet, by the way, but okay.
Well, that's what you have a community overseeing it as well, right? So you need checks and balances.
There's already hundreds of chains that coordinate people. Think about Bitcoin. What is it doing? It's coordinating thousands of people to spend millions of dollars to run nodes, right? And Near, et cetera.
Yeah, but who's going to watch the watchers at the end of the day?
That's a good question. Well, fingers crossed it won't kill us all. That's our time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.